This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
World leaders discuss global fight against the pandemic. EU to invest €1 billion to build vaccine production hubs in Africa. And Egypt brokers Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua live in Nairobi. Ramanyang joins me now with your business headlines.
Thank you, Mahia. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Ethiopia's commodity exchange is set to introduce new products to its platform. And Egypt aims to start producing fully electric cars by the middle of 2022. We'll have the details and the data on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Mahia.
Rama, thank you. Leaders of the world's largest economies have gathered virtually to discuss cooperation against the COVID-19 pandemic. Aid pledges have been made for vaccine development, production, and global economic recovery. In his address, President Xi Jinping said China will provide an additional $3 billion over the next 3 years. The group of 20 nations are expected to adopt a declaration on actions to boost the production of vaccines. This includes voluntary licensing and technology transfers. The event is hosted by Italy and the European Commission. It is the first major summit on ways to overcome the health crisis and prevent future disasters. Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping earlier addressed the G20 Health Summit via video link.
Let us join hands and stand together to build a global community of health for all and work for a healthier and brighter future for humanity.
Well, we earlier spoke to Olalekan Oshunkoya, who's a policy analyst and researcher based in Abuja, Nigeria, on Africa's interest in the G20 summit. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
It's very important that now there is a vaccine, and then the rate at which people are vaccinated will tell us how soon and how quickly we are able to end the pandemic and even prepare for the future ones. So I think it's very important that global leaders are taking initiative and they are being proactive to say that we have to make the vaccines available to poorer countries, because for poorer countries, it's important for us. We cannot essentially just use the resources that we have to produce this vaccine because we don't have the opportunity to do so before the pandemic started. But now that they know for sure what the vaccine is all about and then all the requirement that is required to make this production, then it's important to reduce all the bureaucracy bottleneck that will make it impossible or difficult. You can see, for example, we have countries who are already vaccinating as much as 30% of their population, like the US, for example, like the UK, for example. And we have other countries like Nigeria that's only been able to get just less than a percent of the population. And this is a global pandemic. People are going to move. You can protect your economy, you can protect your country, but people will move and then you end up having the cycle all over again. So it's important that we think about it as a concept from a global point of view, because once one country is affected, every country is affected.
The European Union has said it will donate $1 billion to boost Africa's vaccine production capacity. European Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen has said the move will ensure Africa becomes self-reliant in vaccine manufacturing. The European Union funds will go to establishing vaccine centers on the African continent. Von der Leyen was speaking in Rome at the hub of leading vaccine manufacturers, Pfizer-BioNTech. She also expressed that the Union will be donating about 100 million doses to low- and middle-income countries by the end of 2021. Africa so far remains the least affected continent by COVID-19, with above 4 million infections. Well, let's get more on that. We're now joined live by CGTN's Girum Chala, who is in Addis Ababa. and Dr. Aslam Dasu, co-convener at the Progressive Health Forum based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Girum, I'll begin with you. What are you hearing about this investment, and has there been a reaction from Africa CDC and the African Union?
Maya, the 1.2 billion US dollars donation promised from the European Union is indeed a great news for Africa. As you know, the African Union under African CDC has been planning to produce, manufacture COVID-19 vaccinations within the continent, and that plan is ongoing. And one of the biggest problems they had was money, and this is now going to be resolved at least by some significant persons. Now, the African CDC is excited about this, according to the information that we are getting from the officials there. And they really appreciate the fact that the European Union is standing with the African Union idea of providing vaccinations for the continent. As you know, this is very important for the continent because getting vaccinations, dose of vaccinations for the continent is becoming hard by the day. And so many people have got their first dose, and second dose is nowhere to be found, at least not for now. So this news is really, really excellent for the people of Africa and the Africa CDC, which is planning to manufacture doses within the continent.
Dr. Aslam Dasu, I'll turn to you now. How important then is this investment to Africa's fight against the coronavirus pandemic?
Oh, it's extremely important, and not just good evening to you and your viewers. And it's not just in terms of the current pandemic. We're entering an age of pandemics. This is directly related, of course, as we all know, to the loss of biodiversity and the climate crisis. And so we can expect more of these. It is therefore imperative that South Africa and other African nations have the capacity to protect their people by being able to produce vaccines. It's been a very long struggle to make medicines and vaccines accessible and affordable to these countries. And you know, it's been decades in the making. You may recall the difficulties during the AIDS crisis, in which South Africa was particularly badly struck. And therefore we took a view that there needs to be a new global order in respect of access to medicines. And the TRIPS agreement was then born out of that. This is probably a high point in that long process. And I, for one, am very grateful that the leaders of these countries have seen the light and are putting together these initiatives. It couldn't have come at a better moment.
Girum, coming back to you, where exactly then are these investments going, and who's likely to benefit?
Well, let's start from the last question, because that's very important. It's the people of Africa who are in need of this important vaccination to bring economies back to normalcy, to also bring day-to-day life into its previous order. So the manufacturing of vaccinations using this important fund is going to benefit millions of Africans. And now, to answer your first question, Mike, when it comes to the hubs, the Africa Centers for Disease Control has recognized at least 3 countries with better potential compared to the others when it comes to production and manufacturing of vaccines within the continent. One is Senegal, Egypt, and South Africa are the other countries. So we are expecting and hoping that these 3 countries can serve as a hub for this important initiative that the African Union has launched, and now the European Union is backing. And this finance is going to be allocated at least for this 3 places, so that Africa can, at the end of the day, see COVID-19 vaccination doses manufactured within the continent, Maya.
Right. And finally, Dr. Dasu, what do you see as a priority then for the investment, and in which country specifically?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question too clearly.
Just repeat that. Doctor, I was asking, what do you see as a priority for the investment, and in which country specifically?
Okay, so I can talk about South Africa. Certainly the baseline science is here. We do have the capacity. We've had lots of clinical trials conducted here for medicines and for vaccines over the years. So there is a human resource capacity. What there isn't is probably the finer technology that is required for especially the new generation of vaccines, the mRNA vaccines and the nanoparticle vaccine of of Novavax, and this would be a target of the investment capability. I think in other countries where the development of this capability is a little behind will also benefit by increasing the pool of intellectual capital with respect to making medicines in those locales. It's going to be important with this fund to be dedicated to this effort. The money must not be used for other purposes, because as I said at the outset, we are in a dire situation in Africa, having to depend on the vagaries of the world's supply in order to protect our people. And we have to change that paradigm entirely, so that the targeted investments in countries like South Africa, like Senegal, like Egypt, which already have some capacity, will be very useful, but there must be a developmental approach to other countries which have a desire to create these vaccines and who have the ability to invest in their own people, in their own intellectual capabilities to make these vaccines.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Thank you both for speaking to us. CGTN's Girum Chala in Addis Ababa and Dr. Aslam Dasu, who is a co-convener at the Progressive Health Forum in Johannesburg, South Africa. Moving on, the World Health Organization has warned that lack of vaccine financing could delay Africa's rollout of COVID-19 vaccines. Africa is currently struggling to secure the second dose for those who have already had their first jab. CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy reports.
According to the World Health Organization Africa region, vaccine deliveries to Africa ground to a near halt this month. The World Health Body says the Serum Institute of India diverted doses for domestic use.
COVID-19 vaccine shipments to African countries have slowed down to a trickle this month because of the reliance on India as one of the key manufacturers globally and the devastating surge of cases that country is dealing with.
Between February and May, Africa is said to have received just about a quarter, 18.2 million of the 66 million doses expected through COVAX.
We can still catch up and make up for the lost ground, but time is running out. While African countries await shipments of COVID-19 vaccines, many are struggling to roll out even their limited doses, and second doses to complete the course of vaccination are at risk.
It's estimated that 60% of every dollar spent on delivering vaccines is needed for logistics and operations. WHO currently requires $3 billion to fund vaccinators, cold room storage logistics, equipment, and transport to deliver them to those in need. COVAX, the World Bank, and other partners are supporting co-financing of these additional costs. But African countries still need to develop robust financing plans and cost estimates to access the funds. WHO says it's working with governments to improve planning and costing for operations and delivery services. Daniel Arap-Moy, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
On to North Africa now. The Egyptian Health Ministry is opening larger vaccination centers to address the rising demand for jabs that has seen long queues form outside inoculation facilities. The first such center will be set up in the capital city, Cairo, and will have the capacity to vaccinate up to 15,000 people daily. Adel Mahroui has that report.
At Cairo's exhibition center, the Egyptian Health Ministry has set up this massive COVID-19 vaccination facility. Equipped with a well-ventilated waiting area, the center will hold at least 300 people who can comfortably wait for their turn to be served while keeping a safe distance from others. Inside, the 3,000 square meters hall has been divided into 96 clinics.
With this huge number of clinics, this facility has the capacity to accommodate 50 times more patients than the regular average vaccination centers across the country.
A regular vaccination center has 1 or 2 clinics. Few have 3 or 4. There's no other center in Egypt that has such a number of clinics or is well organized as this center. We work 12 hours daily, 6 days a week. This is a one-of-its-kind facility, not just in Egypt, but here in the Middle East.
2 teams of 300 health workers each can administer up to 15,000 jabs daily. They offer both the Sinopharm and AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines, the only 2 available in Egypt so far.
I was reluctant to apply to get the vaccine. I was worried about the crowding, which I saw at the regular vaccination centers. I decided to apply when I saw the third wave was intensifying. Luckily, I came to this center. I was impressed when my turn came. There was no one at the clinic except myself. The reception area, as you see, is huge. It took me about 4 minutes to get the vaccine.
Egypt has so far acquired more than 5 million COVID-19 vaccines. It has administered a little over half this amount. There are over 400 vaccine centers in the country. The Cairo Exhibition Center is by far the biggest. The Health Ministry says it will soon be launching more of these high-capacity vaccination centers across Egypt. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
To South Africa now, where the city of Cape Town has begun to open more community vaccination sites as the threat of the COVID-19 third wave looms. The city is hoping the sites will increase inoculation numbers, which still remain low due to low registration. CGTN's Travers Andrews has more details.
Cape Town's much-anticipated Phase 2 community vaccinations have finally begun. The first vaccination site opened its doors to those over 60 who are eligible for inoculation. The mayor of Cape Town was among the first people to get vaccinated in a move to promote the city's vaccination drive.
Very important for the city of Cape Town to show that we are in favor and in support of massive vaccinations as soon as possible. The process is a little bit slow, not enough vaccines available. That is unfortunate, but I am of the opinion the pace will pick up in the next couple of days, and so I'm just very, very disappointed with the fact that the registration process for vaccinations in Cape Town in particular standing at lower than 30% currently.
The Western Cape received a total of 33,900 vaccines from the national government. The city is hoping that more people will make use of the community vaccination sites as more vaccines become readily available.
If more and more of our people get vaccinated as soon as possible, that we can knock COVID-19 pandemic, that we can put COVID-19 behind our back so that normality can creep into society, so that more businesses can open, so that the schools can open optimally, so that things could become back to normal.
According to health officials, the COVID-19 third wave is set to hit Cape Town in the next 3 weeks. The city is hoping its vaccination sites will play a role in mitigating its impact.
The city of Cape Town is preparing for the third wave, and part of that is the vaccination registration drive that we're undertaking, but also the actual vaccination process. We're standing in one of our facilities, our community facilities that have been converted into vaccination centers. This is one of 2 at the moment, with another number of them being opened over the next few weeks.
The city has trained 285 of its own health staff to administer the vaccines at clinics like this. It is, though, fairly dependent on the national government when it comes to gaining access to more vaccines. Travers Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
And staying in the Rainbow Nation, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to uncertainty in all sectors of the society, as many activities have been disrupted. One of the fields that has been adversely affected by the pandemic is, of course, the education sector. CGTN's Yolisan Jamela looks at how this sector has been affected in South Africa.
The COVID-19 pandemic has taken a huge toll on South Africa's education system. Hundreds of teachers, for instance, have lost their lives as a result of the pandemic.
COVID-19 has really accelerated the loss of lives among our teaching staff in a manner that we have not seen before. So that has also created a major problem because we have lost teachers with experience.
A number of school children have also succumbed to COVID-19. Mhlanga says the Basic Education Department is continuously introducing new measures to protect educators and learners.
We have sought to increase the number of people who monitor adherence to the health and safety protocols in our schools, because the danger is that learners would forget and start touching each other. So we needed to make sure that there are enough people on the ground to remind them to keep social distancing, but also to make sure that all the sanitizing stations are working and fully equipped so that they can use them as and when there's a need to do that.
Another measure that has been introduced is the suspension of all contact sports in schools. A Council of Education Ministers noted that despite interventions, contact sports events are still contributing to the spread of COVID-19.
Initially, there were reports of 2 schools, but at the last count, there were 8 schools in one province where reports came indicating that sporting activities had become super spreaders. We don't want that to happen.
South Africa uses a rotation system where students alternate days at school. Mhlanga says there's currently no intention of closing schools entirely, a move that is supported by UNICEF.
They need to learn, they need to be protected from mental health impact of, being withdrawn from schools or learning environments or playing in environments. We want to make sure that we do not lose a generation, by keeping them away from becoming, productive members of society in the future.
UNICEF is a United Nations agency responsible for providing humanitarian and developmental aid to children worldwide. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Stay with us here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up. Egypt brokers Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. And Spanish police say they have detained as many as 8,000 migrants. Welcome back. Now, Egypt's diplomatic efforts to secure a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas finally bore fruit when the two sides agreed to cease hostilities on Thursday night. U.S. President Joe Biden has commended President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for Egypt's efforts that led to calm being restored in the affected areas after 11 days of intense fighting. CGTN's Adel Mahroui has the details.
Egypt has once again proven to be a key regional player in restoring peace in the Middle East. Announcing the ceasefire reached between Israel and Hamas, U.S. President Joe Biden praised Egypt for its role in restoring peace.
We've held intensive high-level discussions, hour by hour, literally. Egypt, the Palestinian Authority, and other Middle Eastern countries, with the aim of avoiding the sort of prolonged conflict we've seen in previous years when the hostilities have broken out. I extend my sincere gratitude to President al-Sisi and the senior Egyptian officials who played such a critical role in this diplomacy.
Egyptian negotiators were the first on the ground in Gaza and Israel to begin mediation with the warring sides. For 8 out of the 11 days war, Cairo pulled all strings to convince both sides to accept its initiative, seeking an unconditional ceasefire. The United States, Jordan, Turkey and Qatar were working alongside Egypt through their parallel mediation efforts.
Egypt is the most influential because it has many tools. It has a historic responsibility towards the Palestinian crisis since 1948. It is a trustworthy mediator for all parties in this negotiation. Egypt controls the Rafah passage, which is essential to Gaza. Moreover, President el-Sisi began talking about Gaza reconstruction before the hostilities ended.
Egypt has announced that it is sending 2 security teams, one to Gaza and the other to Israel. Their task is to ensure the ceasefire is observed. Hamas says that maintaining the status quo at Sheikh Jarrah is a major victory. The Israeli forced displacement of Palestinians from their homes in the neighborhood was the main reason why this recent war was sparked.
Egypt is celebrating the ceasefire as another diplomatic victory it achieved. The Egyptian president, however, is looking beyond the recent war. Speaking to international powers, Sisi stressed that the international community needs to set the peace talks back in motion. It's the only way Egypt believes this 7 decades-long conflict could come to an end. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Now, the youth from the South African Students' Congress and the South African Communist Party are calling for the immediate closure of Israel's embassy in South Africa. They staged a protest outside the Israeli embassy in the capital, Pretoria. The student movements also want sanctions imposed on Israel. CGTN's Yolisan Jamela has more.
South Africa has always been vociferous in its support for the Palestinian people's cause. The late former President Nelson Mandela once said, "Our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people." It comes as no surprise then that a number of protests are increasingly being held around the country in solidarity with the Palestinians. The main demand of these marches is for the South African government to close the Israeli embassy.
It is our wish that actually the embassy would not exist in our country, because we can't be in a country where we're governed by a constitution and where we believe in democracy and self-determination, but we are housing people who don't believe in such. That is one, why we're here. Secondly, we are here to simply say the apartheid by Israel must end. And Palestine deserves its self-determination. It deserves its right and its sovereignty as a country to determine for itself what must happen in the country.
We as South Africans, we know what we have experienced by our parents, our forefathers who came before us in South Africa. The same conditions that we have experienced in the past of apartheid, the people of Palestine continue to experience them in their own motherland.
Some students from local universities also joined the protest.
It's important for us to be here to protest the killing of innocent Palestinians, the bombing of their homes, the eviction of them from their houses. I think it's time we step up now.
What is happening in Palestine, in Israel, I beg your pardon, is extremely inhumane. Inhumane. Young people are being killed. Small kids are being killed. For what?
Aside the fact that it is a so-called political statement, I think it's about human rights at the end of the day. And these people are being denied their basic human rights. They're being denied access to land. They're being denied the most basic dignity. And so we refuse to sit back and allow that to happen.
These demonstrators have vowed to continue with demonstrations if their demands are ignored. Meanwhile, the South African Zionist Federation has cautioned South Africa not to take sides in dealing with the Palestine-Israeli conflict. Yulisan Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Elsewhere, Spanish police and soldiers have detained as many as 8,000 migrants in Ceuta city. The migrants swam to the Spanish North African enclave and some even climbed over fences. They say they will not return to Morocco. But authorities claim they have managed to send a majority of them back. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has that story.
Ceuta is a Spanish autonomous city on the north coast of Africa. It is bordered by Morocco and lies along the boundary between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Many migrants from Morocco have in recent weeks swum into the city with the hope of crossing over to Spain. They say they want a better future.
We escaped from Morocco and we need to continue on to Spain. We need a solution. There is nothing here. People sleep on the street. Food and water is available, but we sleep on the street and people cannot host you in their homes. Otherwise, they'll have to pay a fine of 1,000 euros per person if they host immigrants.
They must take us up to Spain or they take us out of Morocco. That's all that we are asking for. We sleep on the streets.
The rush of migrants began when Morocco appeared to ease border controls. The move has been widely seen as a retaliation for Spain's hosting of a Western Sahara independence leader. The Spanish government, however, insists on keeping the two issues separate. Spain, through its defense minister, has in turn accused Morocco of blackmail over its future to act following the surge of migrants heading to Ceuta city earlier this week. Spain has also deployed troops to the Spanish enclave after the initial surge of migrant arrivals on Monday. The Moroccan police have also stepped in on their side to move away hundreds of youth from the border fence. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
Meanwhile, Tunisian and Italian authorities have said they will open migration hotlines. Linked between Tunis and Rome, the lines will help monitor irregular movement between the two countries. Italian Interior Minister Luciana Lamorgese on Thursday said there has been a surge in arrivals from Tunisia at Italy's Lampedusa island. Italy has also offered financial aid to the North African country to cushion it as it struggles with debts. The support is expected to help reduce the flow of migrants to Europe. Tunis has promised to cooperate by dedicating a direct hotline to Rome. This commitment came after a meeting between Tunisian Prime Minister Hichem Meshishi and the European Commissioner for Home Affairs, Ylva Johansson.
We have had very good political results from our discussions here today, and I'm looking forward to cooperate on investments that will help Tunisia to recover from the pandemic, from the economic consequence of the pandemic, both socially and economically, create new job opportunities, new hope for young people.
And it's just about time for all the day's business. Rama is back with the latest.
Thank you very much, Mahia. Here's what's coming up in business news. Ethiopia's commodity exchange is set to introduce new products to its trading platform. And Egypt aims to start producing electric cars by the middle of 2022.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Welcome back. South Africa's low economic growth and its rising debt burden could lead to more socio-economic tensions and affect the country's policy reforms. According to Moody's annual report published much earlier in the week, South Africa is, at least the country's credit profile, was relatively balanced with its low foreign currency debt and strong institutions counting in its favor. Moody's decided this month against making any decisions on the country's rating profile, which are currently 2 levels deep into sub-investment grade at Ba2 with a negative outlook. The 2 other major ratings firms, that's Fitch and S&P, also rate the country in junk territory. S&P is in fact due to give its credit review later on today. The last downgrade of the country's ratings came late in 2020, but the February budget, which reduced public spending, has eased some of those concerns. Statistics South Africa reports that the country's retail trade sales declined by 2.5% year-on-year in the month of March. The largest negative annual growth rates were recorded for all other retailers. That's retailers in pharmaceutical and medical goods, cosmetics, toiletries and general dealers. Now, the main negative contributor to this decrease was general dealers. Seasonally adjusted retail trade sales were down by nearly 4% in the month of March compared to February 2021. This followed month-on-month changes of 6.9% in February 2021 and minus 2.3% in the month of January. Onto the Horn of Africa now. Ethiopia's commodity exchange says it will introduce new products to its trading platform, including those covering industrial items. At the moment, trading is done mainly covering agricultural produce like coffee, sesame, wheat, maize. The agency that's helping at least 3 million farmers sell their products in an orderly fashion says it wants to encourage even more sectors to take advantage of the opportunities brought about by the Continental Free Trade Area. CGTN's Coletta Njohi spoke to Bereket Meseret, the chief marketing operator at the Ethiopia Commodity Exchange.
Representatives of buyers and sellers of commodities strive to close lucrative deals. 2 recently added specialities of beans are proving good for business.
So far, we have traded around 40,000 ton of different speckled and PGMB contracts, and having the launching of those contracts in recent periods, just like 5 or 6 months ago, the progress and the supply chain is responding to the marketing platform, both in terms of volume and quality as well.
Industrial products like cotton are under consideration for inclusion on the exchange, and there is now a deal for high-value items. The Ethiopia Commodity Exchange has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Mines and Petroleum to also introduce minerals into the trading, and this will include emerald, potash, tantalum, and sapphire, among other minerals. The idea is to establish an organized trading of the minerals and eliminate the need for brokers.
We will have industry consultation with the actors, having the inputs on the industry consultation and best practices and benchmarks, both in local and international practice. We'll discuss on it, how it could be managed. Did the exchange can handle all the quality and standard compliance in by itself, or did it better to outsource with the third party or any other way around? All those issues will be addressed.
Coffee remains a top performer, with at least 600,000 metric tons having been sold in the past 10 months. These traders hope with more industrial products on the exchange, they will have a greater ability to export, especially to more African countries, and also further tap into the African Continental Free Trade Area that provides an available market of 1.3 billion people. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Further north, let's head over to Egypt. The country aims to start producing a locally assembled electric vehicle by the middle of 2022. Public Enterprise Minister Hisham Tawfiq made this announcement following his tour of the headquarters of the state-run El Nasr Automotive Manufacturing Company. That outfit plans to start producing the first made-in-Egypt EVs. El Nasr's annual production capacity is forecast to reach at least 25,000 EVs a year.
Preparations are continuing to produce electric cars for the first time in Egypt. It's a partnership between Egypt's state-owned Al Nasr Automotive Company and China's Dongfeng Motors.
The future is for electric cars. When we talk electric cars, we talk China, because China has a very advanced position in the global market, especially for producing the lithium-ion batteries. China has something close to 50% of the production of EV cars, so went to a Chinese company, one of the big four. The company will help us rehabilitate our plant, which is in good shape, and rehabilitate with the target of producing 25,000 cars per shift. And we'll start, of course, with one shift, and if things develop well, we can go to another shift for a maximum of 50,000 cars.
Production will include 50% local components. To encourage Egyptians to purchase electric cars, each will be sold at a competitive price of $19,000, with low interest rate loans for those who need financing and up to $3,000 discounts for taxis.
This could be a turning point for the future of the vehicle market in Egypt. If the project succeeds, other companies, private and public, will start locally producing electric and hybrid cars too, making use of the research and development unit to be established by the government for this purpose.
Work has begun on other elements of the project as well. The government is also preparing the infrastructure for electric cars, such as building electrical charging stations, whether in fuel stations, at malls, in housing complexes, or even in parks around the country, to be able to have access to these charging stations by the car owners. The initial plan is to have about 3,000 charging stations in the first phase. Electric car production is expected to benefit the economy and Egyptians.
The feeder industries will witness an expansion and will gain experience in a new domain, especially that the deal entails that local components in the car will reach 85% in the future. This project will also provide employment opportunities, whether direct employment at Ar-Nassar Automotive Company or indirect jobs at the feeder plants.
The electric cars production is part of a comprehensive plan by the government to increase dependency on renewable energy, according to the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Yes Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
We're still in North Africa. Let's head over to Tunisia. The unemployment rate over there went up to 17.8% in the first quarter of the year. That's according to the latest data set released by the National Institute of Statistics. The number of unemployed persons estimated at that quarter to be about 743,000 individuals. Compare that to 725,000 unemployed persons at the end of the fourth quarter of 2020. With the details, CGTN's Adnan Chouachi.
Protests continue in many regions across Tunisia. There are more than 750,000 unemployed youths, including 250,000 university graduates. They are urging the authorities to reveal its roadmap for tackling unemployment and the weak economy in the North African country.
The government does not seem to care about youths. We are fed up because there are no real job opportunities. There's no hope and no life without work and dignity. There's no concrete roadmap for tackling unemployment in Tunisia.
President of the Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights explained that the spread of unemployment and poverty among Tunisian youths has pushed thousands to flee the country. In fact, irregular migration is on the rise from Tunisia to Europe since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Uptick in irregular migration from Tunisia is worrying since last November. Most of these desperate people are unemployed youth who are looking for better opportunities overseas. At least 12,000 irregular migrants reached Italian shores in 2020. More are coming, while some 12,000 more were arrested by the Tunisian Coast Guard and prevented from crossing the Mediterranean.
Prime Minister Hisham Meshishi noted that his government believes in employment recovery in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. He also urged the private sector to contribute to job creation.
It's true that the job market is facing a crisis and that our youths cannot find opportunities. However, we're trying to give hope to the unemployed people through training and private initiatives. Tunisia is facing an economic and social crisis, which has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet, we're still confident that the economy will revive and jobs will be created.
According to the National Institute of Statistics in Tunisia, the unemployment rate among men increased by 0.6 points to 15%, while for women the rate decreased by 1.1 points to 23.8% in the first quarter of 2021. The unemployment rate among the youth hit 40.8%, 40.4% among men, and 41.6% among women. According to the IMF, the economic shock in Africa was felt more dramatically than elsewhere, since the African economy is highly dependent on foreign trade. Experts say Africa's financing needs are estimated at $400 billion. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Away from the continent now, let's head over to the United Kingdom. Retail sales last month did surge as shoppers splurged on new clothes after shops reopened following months of pandemic restrictions. Sales volumes in April were up 9.2% month on month after rising by 5.1% in the month of March. Online retail share of spending, however, declined to 30% in April from 34.7% in March. That's the lowest number since December. British retail sales are now 10.6% above their level in February 2020, before the pandemic struck. Retailers such as clothing and furniture stores, which the government classified as non-essential, reopened to shoppers in England on the 12th of April after shutting down in early January. And across the Atlantic in the US, the number of people filing new claims for unemployment benefits dropped further below the 500,000 level last week. Initial claims for state benefits fell to 444,000 to reach the lowest levels since the pandemic surged in March 2020. Now, this unemployment figure is nearly half of the peak number in April 2020, but expectations for a quick rebound in jobs are being tempered by a swell in jobless roles earlier this month. Applications are likely to decrease even further in the weeks ahead after Republican governors in at least 21 states announced they would withdraw unemployment benefits. These include a weekly $300 subsidy, which businesses say are encouraging the jobless to stay home instead of going out to seek work. I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. In Global Business, we'll be exploring the potential growth of Islamic finance in Africa and its role, potentially, in repairing the damage inflicted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Details on that and plenty more coming your way at the top of the hour. See you at 1800 GMT. For now, back to Mahia.
Rama, thank you. Here's what's still to come on Africa Live. In the sport, Terrell Stoglin hits 40 as AS Sale fight back from 16 points down to beat AS Police 88-79 in the Basketball Africa League.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
We tip off in Rwanda, where Terrell Stoglin became the first player to score 40 points in the Basketball Africa League, helping AS Sale fight back from a 16-point deficit to beat AS Police 88-79 in a Group B clash on Thursday night in Kigali. The 29-year-old guard made 14 of his 31 field goal attempts to top the 33 points scored by AS Police's Joseph Nziakor, the game's second highest scorer. Stoglin was a rebound short of a double-double, while his teammate Rashad Dean James finished with 21 points after a 9-for-18 performance, and Moroccan international Abderrahim Naja registered his first BAL double-double with 13 points and 12 rebounds. The group leaders will be decided on Sunday when AS Sale and Club Atletico Petróleos de Luanda, with 2 wins apiece, clash. James hailed the resilience of his team following the victory.